Over $2 million is going to the winner in this $50,000 buy-in tournament at the World Series of Poker. Let's take a look at a key hand featuring an absolute legend of the game, Victor Blom, aka Isildur 1. I'll quickly set up the situation before we get into the hand. There are 5 players left, and there's $2 million going to the winner, like I said. Each player has locked up little under $500,000, and the stack setup are as follows. Adrian Mateos is the short stack with about 20 big blinds. Chance Cornuth is covering him by a little bit. He's got about 30 big blinds. Jesse Launis, who is one of the players in this hand, goes into this hand with 47 big blinds, so he's pulled away quite a bit from the 4th and 5th place spots, and Adrian Mateos is really the one who's almost on the ropes with only 20 big blinds. And then there's 2 bigger stacks. Victor Blom, aka Isildur, he's got 14 million, which is 70 big blinds, and Sergio Aido is the runaway chip leader at this point with 20 million. That's over 100 big blinds. In this hand, the action folds to Victor Blom in the small blind. Once again, it's Jesse Launis in the big blind, so Victor Blom is the covering stack with 14 million to Jesse Launis's 9.4 million. Victor Blom picks up King 4 offsuit in the small blind. Today I'm joined by tournament pro Aaron Baroni here to provide some expert analysis as we go through this hand. Aaron, how are you playing this spot as Victor Blom when it folds to you as the bigger stack?
So we saw Blom look down at his cards, but I'm pretty sure before he even looked, he thought to himself, I'm raising. Like, it's such a great spot to apply pressure to a middle stack of Jesse Launis. Because the other stacks are so short or a lot shorter, Launis is not incentivized to play hands here. He makes money, he makes equity by folding. And so he's going to be folding a lot of hands. And so the fact that Blom has King 4 is pretty good. It's great. Like, he's blocking some of the hands that Launis would continue with. But again, if you know, look deep in his soul, I'm pretty sure that Blom was going to raise pre regardless of his holdings. And sometimes in poker, that's kind of what you want to do. Like, there's that phrase, you don't play the player, you play the person, but really you're playing a situation. And the situation is that Launis doesn't want to play a lot of hands here because of his stack setup. And you're going to get a lot of fold equity. So, yes, Blom has King 4, but if Blom has Jack 4 or 8-4 or 10-3, or for whatever reason, he's dealt more than one card, I think he's going to be raising here, and I think that's the right thing to do.
We ran this spot in Hold'em Resources Calculator, as we do before every one of these WSOP hand breakdowns. We inputted all the stacks, all the payouts, so we know exactly how the computer is going to play this spot, and it confirms what Aaron just said. Victor Blom is going to be raising a lot of hands. When I ran this, the computer had a lot of green on the hand chart, which indicates a lot of hands that can profitably raise, and a lot of hands that could profitably just limp in as well. Victor Blom's specific hand of King 4 offsuit really favors raising, and that's what he does. He makes it 700,000, which is 3.5 big blinds. Jesse Launis picks up ace 3 of spades in the big blind. Aaron just mentioned that Jesse Launis should be playing fairly tight in the big blind here, given that he's kind of trying to wait out those 2 shorter stacks and not bust before them. But ace 3 of spades, very strong hand. It still falls squarely into good enough to call terrible, even given that ICM pressure. He does flick in that extra 500,000 chips, and we go to the flop with 1.6 million in the middle. Little note about these two guys. These are 2 of the fastest players I've ever seen at a big final table. It's basically the antithesis to any high roller final table I've ever seen before. I think this entire hand takes about 2 minutes. There are some players where this hand would take 10 minutes. In any case, the flop comes 4-4-3 with 2 clubs. Once again, Victor Blom has King 4, so he flops trip 4s. And Jesse Launis flops really well, too. He's got ace 3 on 4-4-3. So both players have to be feeling pretty good about this flop. But Jesse Launis is going to get some bad news as the hand develops. What is your take on how Victor Blom should play this flop after hitting trips, Aaron? 1.6 million in the middle.
So there's always a temptation to slow play when you hit a big hand, especially on a lowish board that doesn't seem to hit your range. But when you're an aggressive player, like especially when you're an aggressive player and you have that image, you want to be betting more of your strong hands here. And Blom's going to be betting here anyway with a lot of hands. We had said before, he's going to raise a lot pre. He's going to apply a lot of pressure. Well, now he has a really great hand, and he still needs to be betting that sort of combination. Otherwise, are all his bets just bluffs? Like, that's not great. So I think it's a great spot for him to keep betting, apply pressure to Launis's range, but also balance his own range out by having strong hands. And sizing wise, I think going really small is the way to go because he is be betting this flop so often.
Victor Blum clearly agrees with you as he reaches for 400,000 chips and throws them into the pot quite quickly. That's a 400,000 chip bet into 1.6 million, a 25% pot bet. Jesse Launis, I think, clear call in position here with his ace three against this small bet.
Yeah, I think any other decision is bad. Like, I mean, folding is way too tight. Raising, some people might say you raise or figure out where you're at. That's not really a thing. So when both other options are so bad, then one's very clear, and I like a call.
Jesse Launis does quite quickly put in the call. I think the flop action took about 45 seconds total there. And we get an interesting turn. It's the six of spades. So all the straight draws from the flop have now connected in some way. They've either made a straight or a pair. Hands like 7-5, 6-5, 6-2. All those types of hands have connected in some way. Victor Blum with his trip fours. No reason to slow down here, right, Aaron? He should just continue betting.
Definitely think Blom should continue betting here. I know that a couple straight draws got there, but those aren't likely to be part of Launis's range, given what we talked about pre-flop, where he should be folding more. So would he ever have 5-deuce offsuit? Even 7-5 offsuit feels pretty thin to defend here in this spot. Pre-flop, suited, you could make an argument for, but you could also say that he should be folding those a little more because of the stack sizes. So maybe he has 7-5 suited, sure, but 5-deuce suited doesn't seem as likely. And so now we've eliminated basically 3/4 of the possible straights. But what he does have is he does have 7-6 suited. He does have 6-5 suited. So he actually has some straight draws, I would say more straight draws, that have turned equity that will continue that are worse than Blom's trips. And that gives Blom another reason to bet. Plus, he gets value from 3x that Launis can have, or club draws, or perhaps even ace highs. So I think it's a great reason for Blom to keep betting, and I think he should size up given this texture.
Blum does load up quite a big bet. He goes for about 1.4 million into 2.4 million, so roughly 55-60% pot. Jesse Launis now in a fairly uncomfortable spot. He's facing this relatively big bet. It's a chunky portion of his stack, and he's starting to approach the shorter stacks if he calls here and doesn't end up winning the pot. So there's a lot on the line for him, a lot more on the line than is for Blum. That said, ace 3 on 4-4-3-6, probably just too strong of a hand to fold on the turn here, right, Aaron? I mean, it's the best 3 you can have. You have a ton of hands in your range like king, queen, 1 club, queen, jack, 1 club, missed ace high that floated the flop, perhaps some weaker draws. So ace 3, it's actually one of the stronger hands in Jesse Launis's range. And if he folds this hand, he's probably going to find himself folding 60-70% of the time on this turn, which an aggressive player like Victor Blum is going to exploit in his sleep. What's your take on Launis's spot?
I totally agree. And let's, for a second, do the thought experiment of folding ace 3 here. All right. So what does Launis continue with? Well, 3 of a kind. If he has a 4, he'll continue. If he has a 6-5 or a 7-6, so like pair and straight draw, he'll continue. If he has a big flush draw, he'll continue. If he has a straight, he'll continue. If that's his only continuing range in this turn, the range is way too strong, first of all. And if you're up against even an aggressive player who realizes that your range is too strong, they're just not going to be bluffing the river enough, right? And so I think calling ace 3 while feeling uncomfortable actually gives your range a little more balance in that, yes, it's a pair and you feel that you have the best hand right now, but it's also a hand that isn't nutted, that you're not really trapping with. And so your entire range isn't just traps and big draws. It's these slightly weaker, or actually much weaker, made hands that could fold the pressure. And you don't really want to fold them, but part of playing good poker is having a balanced range. That means having hands like that that will fold to more pressure. If your entire range is just, I have the nuts, if someone figures that out, why are they going to bet into you? Right? So having a hand that does fold a later street like this one to pressure, I think while feeling kind of uncomfortable and yeah, I don't want to call and just fold later. I actually think having hands like that in your range makes you tougher to play against. And that's really the ultimate goal.
There was a really key nugget of advice that Aaron peppered in there, and it's something that Doug Polk has harped on for years when making poker training content. It's okay, and in fact correct, to have folds on every street. Just because a hand has to fold the next street to aggression, that doesn't mean you shouldn't call it on the current street. In fact, you should have a folding range on every street. That's how optimal poker is played. Now, if you have a very reliable, exploitative read, if you know your opponent is an absolute monkey who's literally going to bet on the river every single time if you call the turn, then sure, you can fold more on the turn so you don't find yourself in that crappy river scenario. But against most players, and even Victor Blum, who's a very aggressive player, he is a thinking, balanced player overall. He's not going to just barrel this river every single time. And it's okay for Jesse Launis to have a hand that's going to have to fold on most rivers. So despite the fact that this ace 3 on 4436 doesn't look so great, doesn't look like an amazing scenario, Jesse Launis really has no choice but to call the turn, reevaluate on the river, and just see what happens. It's not a comfortable spot, but sometimes you have to get into uncomfortable spots in poker, and indeed Jesse Launis calls on the turn, and we go to the river with 5.3 million in the pot, and it's the queen of spades. 4436 queen is the final board, and the flush draw from the flop missed. Victor Blum quickly loads up the clip again. He's going to go for 3.2 million into this 5.3 million chip pot, so about 2/3 pot. This is also about half of Jesse Launis' remaining stack. So this is a very high stakes scenario for Jesse Launis. If he were to call and lose here, he would be down to 3.2 million. He would actually be the shortest stack, and he would be at risk of busting next and missing out on that next really juicy pay jump, which is about $180,000. Aaron, what is your take on this river bet size of 3.2 million from Victor Blum, and what do you think about Jesse Launis' spot?
I really like the bet size overall. And we can see that Blum has king 4 and has trips. But this is a really tough spot for Launis because Blum is a very aggressive player, capable of applying pressure with hands that bricked entirely. And there are a lot of them on this texture, right? He could have 2 missed clubs. He could have a random 5 or a random 7. Like, what if Blum has king 5 or king 7 or even king deuce or 9-8 of clubs? There are so many random hands that Blum could use as bluffs here, where if I'm Launis, I'm thinking, well, he's a really aggressive player. He knows it's a great spot to apply pressure. And I know he's going to do it with so many combinations that I wouldn't fault Launis for making this call. And I think in a cash game situation, if you have that read, you should make this call 100 times out of 100, right? The player is capable of bluffing the spot. A lot of draws bricked. I don't block any of them. I'm going to make this call, right? But in a tournament, it is different. And as you mentioned, when Launis loses this pot, he goes down to a stack that's actually going to be the shortest stack. And that drastically affects how much his equity is in this tournament. So it's not just purely, do I have the best hand enough pot odds wise to make this call? You have to think about other factors, which makes tournaments a lot more complex. On the other hand, we talked on the turn about Launis having a hand that could call turn and fold river. And I know a lot of players feel like, well, if I call the turn and I fold a brick river, I'm being exploited. When in the reality, if you have a hand that never folds the river, if you're just always going call, call, that's far more likely to get you exploited by a really good aggressive player. And as you mentioned, Blom is a very good aggressive player, and he's not a monkey, as you described, who's just going to barrel all the time. So I think it's a very tough spot for Launis, and I wouldn't fault him for making either decision.
Yeah, maybe the Isildur of 12 years ago is the monkey who's going to barrel the river every time, but he's grown into himself. He's going to play probably more reasonable overall. Jesse Launis tanks for quite a while by his standards. He counts out the calling chips, which is a smart thing to do because he's now comparing that to what he will have behind should he lose and considering, okay, what position will I be in if this call is unsuccessful? Would I prefer to just conserve my stack? That's something you should be doing constantly when you're running deep in tournaments and especially at final tables.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool thing that he did here by doing that. And a lot of players wouldn't even consider doing it. The other question is, if he's folding this, what is he calling? Obviously, there's no hands that like, yeah, okay, a straight, but like, what are his hero call type hands here? And maybe it's 6-5. because then that would block a straight from Blom. I mean, maybe you'd rather have ace 5 than ace 3. I'm not quite sure. I think it is a really tough spot, and the ICM plays a significant factor, as it always does. But as I said before, I would not fault him for making this call.
He does consider the hero call for quite a long time, but eventually looks like he's going to think better of it and throw his cards into the muck, saving his 6.6 million chips and keeping himself as the third place chip stack. And with that pot, Victor Blom moves up to 17 million, just behind Sergio Aido for the chip lead. Keep in mind, you can watch this entire final table on PokerGo and see how it played out. I'm not going to give you any spoilers here. And if you want to upgrade your tournament skills at a discount, you should know that the WSOP Survival Sale is happening right now at upswingpoker.com throughout the entire duration of the main event from day one, which started today until the champion hoists the bracelet. All Upswing Lab plans are 33% off. That's going to get you access to a wealth of resources that is in the lab, preflop charts, lessons, play and explains, including from the guy next to me, Aaron Baroni. Aaron, you've made quite a bit of content in the lab now after being a coach for a couple of months. Can you speak to the type of stuff that our viewers and listeners can expect to find from you inside the lab?
Recently, I released a module, 5 common mistakes that tournament players make. Took people through spots that are very, very common mistakes and how you can avoid them. Additionally, I released a play and explain where I covered one of my more recent final tables, went through all the significant hands so you get to see everything of importance, and took you on that journey to where I, spoiler, end up shipping it. So that's a great way to learn from me about final table play. And the module I released has more things about common mistakes tournament players make, how you can avoid them, how you can make more deep runs, and have bigger scores.
That module is especially useful for people who dabble in tournaments because that means you're going to have a lot of just common mistakes that you make, and you can really tighten the screws on your game quickly and efficiently by checking out Aaron's module. And that 10 or so part play and explain of him shipping a nice sized tournament online is great as well. He's really able to reveal a lot more about his strategy and how you should approach your strategy than he ever could on his Twitch streams. And it's all 33% off right now. Just head over to upswingpoker.com to check it out and get in the lab. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and follow to get notified about future ones. We should be back next week, barring a deep run in the WSOP main event from Aaron or myself. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.